I want to welcome you all to this morning's committee hearing. I'm joined by my colleague and dear friend Marquise Harris Dawson. Mr. Clerk, you want to run through the agenda?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Did you want me to read all the items, or?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's get it out of the way.
Okay. Item number 1 is communication from the Controller and the City Ethics Commission relative to the appointment of Mr. Shedrick Davis to the City Ethics Commission for the term ending June 30th, 2023. This is a time limit with the last day for council action as July 3rd. This matter is
You mean the controller gets an appointment?
Yes.
Oh, Lord. Who is this man? All right, go ahead.
This item is also scheduled in council today at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Item number 2 is a communication from the city attorney and ordinances amending the Los Angeles Municipal Code pertaining to the regulation of commercial cannabis activity and amending the rules and regulations for cannabis procedures. Item number 3 is a communication from the city attorney, resolutions and ordinances relative to a proposed special tax proposition on various cannabis-related activities and calling a special election to be held November 6, 2018. This is a time limit filed with the last day for council action is July 3rd, 2018. Item number 4 is a communication from city attorney and ordinance amending the Los Angeles Municipal Code to temporarily reduce the gross receipts tax for certain medical and non-medical cannabis businesses and city administrator officer report relative to the fiscal impact of the proposed tax changes. Item number 5 is a communication from the city attorney, resolutions and ordinances relative to amendments to realign city and Los Angeles Unified School District election dates with state election dates and calling a special election to be held on November 6, 2018. This is a time limit filed with the last day for council action of July 3rd, 2018. Item number 6 is a communication from city attorney and ordinance relative to updating the fundraising window for the 2020 election for council candidates. Item number 7 is a City Ethics Commission report relative to adoption of the Conflict of Interest Code for the Municipal Improvement Corporation of Los Angeles, MICLA. Time limit filed with the last day for council action of August 31st, 2018. Item number 8 is a resolution, Weston Harris Dawson and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on AB 2899, which would clarify that firms must display their active California commercial cannabis activity license number in all cannabis-related marketing and advertising. Item number 9 is resolution Weston Koritz and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on SB 1302, which would prohibit a local government from banning delivery of cannabis. Item number 10 is resolution Blumenfeld-Rue and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on AB 2101, which would establish a pilot program in which caregiver resource centers would facilitate care to persons who are at least 65 years of age or who have cognitive impairment. Item number 11 is resolution Englander Blumenfeld and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on AB 3162, which would make changes to the licensure process for residential treatment facilities for alcoholism or drug abuse and increase fines for violations or unlicensed activity. Item number 12 is resolution Englander Rodriguez and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on SB 913, which would exempt the city of Los Angeles from per diem prevailing wage requirements for graffiti abatement work performed by individuals employed by a nonprofit community-based organization with a contract with the city. Item number 13 is resolution Englander Rodriguez and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on the federal Making Affordable Housing Work Act of 2018, which would raise rents for low-income residents and impose work requirements to receive affordable housing. Item number 14 is resolution O'Farrell Koritz and Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the city's position on AB 1779, AB 2119, AB 2153, AB 2943, AB 3046, AB 1985, AB 2291, SB 990, and SB 1343 regarding reasonable legal protections to uphold the rights of the transgender community and all LGBTQ individuals, And item number 15 is a city clerk report relative to the referral to the council's various committees of liens, street lighting district items, State Department of Alcoholic and Beverage Control licensing applications, rent escrow account program items, reward motions, easements, vacations, and Walk of Fame items.
Thank you so much. Why don't we start out with public comment? Let me call up Felisa Carbajal, Adam Vine, Alexis D'Angelo. Please come forward. Sergeants, if you'd remove the ropes. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. My name is Felicia Carbajal, and I'm here once again to reclaim the conversation about social equity as it relates to the legalization and regulation of cannabis. As a child, my late grandfather, who swam across a river and worked in the fields of the Central Valley, so his 10 children and 42 grandchildren could have a better life, told me, "Mija, it's your job to hold the door open for your cousins who can get in." Today, I take that job very seriously, so I stand here for my siblings, my cousins, both black and brown, to ensure that they are included in this conversation in a real way. As I don't seek a license, and the cannabis community's silence on the subject equals death. While I typically support special taxes, I can't get behind this one. This conversation is about radical social change, past the business deals, in and out of this room. We've seen this room utilize the conversation about social justice as a Trojan horse to get what they've wanted, under the guise of social justice. So we call the council to recognize social equity as more than a buzzword.
Thank you. Thank you. If I could have the next speaker, please identify yourself.
Good morning. My name's Adam Vine. I'm a co-founder of Cage-Free Cannabis and Cage-Free Repair. I'm here today because this is an industry in an equity crisis. Companies are going public through Canada, while many thousands of Angelenos deal with the consequences of a failed racist war on drugs. And this ballot proposition is a fool's errand wrapped in a clown's bow. We need you to fund this equity program from the general fund, and we need it yesterday. We need solutions that address the scope of the problem from South LA to the Valley to Boyle Heights and beyond. If you want solutions, we have plenty of innovative problem solvers in this room. But a 1% tax carved out by council districts is not a solution for equity, justice, and repair in this industry. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could get the next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Alexis D'Angelo, member and outreach liaison for the California Cannabis Industry Association, and we are opposed to any additional taxes, as we see adding additional taxes just fuels the illicit market. We are all for supporting social equity, and that is extremely important for the growth of the industry as well as Los Angeles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, Donnie Anderson, Elmer Rodon, Francisco Romero. And Jared, you'd be up after them. Hey, Donnie, Mr. Anderson.
How you doing? We do not need any more taxes. Taxes is going to continue to hurt this industry, and we need to make sure that the money goes into the DCR, not into the councilman or into their nest. We need to make sure that the money is funding this program to make sure that it's successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Elmer Roldan, and I am here with Brothers Sun Selves Coalition. We are a coalition of 10 organizations across LA County working to decriminalize young people of color. Today, we are specifically here in support of the Cannabis Reinvestment Trust Fund being increased from 1% to 2% in taxes. We believe that this is the first good step in reversing the decades of the racist war on drugs policies that disproportionately impacted black and brown communities across the nation. This is definitely a first step, though. We know that more aggressive action needs to be taken to address the issue. We appreciate the members of the Rules Committee for approaching this issue with sensitivity for the communities of color that have long been impacted by these policies. We specifically ask that the November ballot measure include language that specifically targets youth 0 to 24. We appreciate your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Jarrett?
Good morning. My name is Jared Kylo, Chair of the Board of UCBA, a state's leading cannabis retail trade organization. We stand here today excited by the leadership that the City of Los Angeles continues to exemplify. The industry has long asked cities and elected officials to set aside cannabis tax revenue for industry-specific needs, and through your leadership, we are one step closer to that goal. The Cannabis Reinvestment Act will ensure cannabis tax dollar funds, much-needed enforcement against illegal cannabis activity, support important social equity programs and cannabis education, and ensures communities that welcome cannabis activities receive funding for localized public improvements. UCBA fully supports this ballot position and the intent behind it, but we must also caution the city that this additional tax must be offset by a reduction in the existing Prop M taxes. The tax rate currently in place has already created an increased demand in the illicit market, and without enforcement, significant revenue is being diverted, resulting in a reduction in tax revenue for the city. We further embark on Phase 2 non-retail licensing to ensure that tax rates are not too high and avoid discouraging companies from locating in LA.
Thank you. Okay, and then I'm going to be looking for, if Mr. Herman is here, you can come up. Jonathan, cannot pronounce the last name. You can help me with that. Megan Joseph and Michael Jensen. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Francisco Romero. I'm here on behalf of Promesa Boa Heights, but particularly I've been asked to represent LaPi, which is the Los Angeles Preschool Advocacy Initiative. We want to recognize the City Rules Committee, the leadership of Councilman Wesson, Dawson, and Weisat for the support for child and youth development and recognizing the importance between the connection of the past cannabis policy and our children. Similar to, we see as the tobacco tax industry gives a certain percentage of their resources to fund organizations that are doing work with youth, we see it similar on a localized level. So this is an opportunity to really invest, because this investment in the youth early on is multiplied by dividends in the future, because the more successful you are in intervening from the 0 to 5, the less likely you are to become caught up in the criminal justice system.
Thank you. Mr. Herman, and again, I'm looking for Megan Joseph, Michael Jensen, Jonathan, I really can't pronounce the last name, Rafael Gonzalez, and Samika Gaskin. Speak, Mr. Herman.
So yesterday at the LA County Board of Supervisors meeting, we spoke on this item 18, regulations, proposed tax, non-medical business. Also item number 11, alcoholism, like Jose Huizar. And we also dealt with item 12, dealing with Rodriguez, cunt, bitch, against the what? State legislative program. We spoke about item 13, making affordable housing. Fuck you, HHH. And then I go into item 14, God hates homosexuality, period. And then I go back to item 2, because it's only one fucking minute. So here we're dealing with how to regulate taxes. Leave these fucking people alone and let them do their business without overtaxation. We are the legislative body, and we know what's right for public interest. Let the DBAs burn, motherfucker.
Please don't encourage him. All right, yes, identify yourself.
Greetings, my name is Megan Joseph. I'm representing H&W STEAM Institute, Inc., Indico, Women Above Ground, and City Light Networks for nonprofit and for-profit organizations. In regards to the special tax, I think that it is a wonderful idea, but just not implemented now. Funding should be directed towards the social equity program so that we can lay a solid foundation for real community impact, not just for LA, but in California in general. We're ranked number 50 for quality of life, and especially Mr. President Wesson as being a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. laying that foundation for leadership, academic excellence. The special tax going to STEM programs is wonderful, but funding now should be focused on the social equity program, especially for implementation in council districts 8 through 10, where we can really leverage that special tax for innovative STEAM programs in the community. This is the focus that we should have right now. Social equity, leveraging the current taxes to fund that program for positive impact in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Michael Jensen. I want to thank you for the changes that have been proposed, and also I support lowering taxes for this industry. I have a specific question about the proposed amendment to Section 104.20D, which appears to now require Tier 3 applicants to support Tier 1 and 2 applicants. And it looks like it just, I wonder how, maybe this is a question more than a comment, but how that squares with, sorry, it was 104.20E, how that squares with 104.20D, which requires Tier 2 social equity applicants to provide business licensing and compliance assistance to Tier 1 participants. So it's just a question.
Okay, and then I'll try to get somebody to come over to the side and answer your question. If I could have the next, good to see you again.
Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. My name is Rafael Gonzalez, and on behalf of First 5 LA, I want to thank the Rules Committee for your continued support of child and youth development and for your consideration to set aside funds for programs specifically for children and youth. I do also want to give a special shout out to your respective staff for all the work that they've done on this issue to date. By incorporating a strong focus on youth development that clearly targets children and youth, the City of LA can ensure that these funds are advancing equity and that its most impacted children are receiving adequate support in communities most affected by prior cannabis policy. This is especially true for children under 6 years of age, a population of 286,000 here in the city of Los Angeles who have virtually no programs or dollars geared towards them. While a set-aside for children is an important step forward, it's vital that these programs also receive sufficient and sizable funding given the cannabis is expected to be a billion-dollar industry. That is why we're asking the city to ensure that the proposed reinvestment fund be considered for the November ballot. And again, thank you for your support on this issue.
Thank you. And I'm looking for Lynn Lyman, Jackie Subek. Yes, please come forward.
Good morning. Shamika Gaskins, Executive Director of the Children's Defense Fund, California. At CDF, we seek to ensure investments holistically in the well-being of underserved children, especially Black and brown children, and their families in California. So I want to thank the city's Rules Committee, specifically Council Members Wesson, Harris Dawson, and Weezer for their support of children and youth development in the city of Los Angeles. The proposed set-aside of funds for programs and services and activities for children 0 to 24 recognizes the need to put children and youth at the forefront of the expected rate of growth of cannabis in the city of Los Angeles and having an equitable policy that reflects those who've been most impacted. These funds, which are much needed for social programming, is vitally important that they are adequately funded and consistent with the expected rate of the cannabis industry. Thus, we request that the Rules Committee ensure that these goals are reflected in the November ballot language for the Cannabis Reinvestment Fund, and we thank you for your leadership on this issue and taking an important first step to child and youth development in the city.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Svetko. I am part of the Los Angeles County Cannabis Advisory Work Group. I wanted to share with you a little bit briefly and give you some insight as to some of the events that happened yesterday. Overwhelmingly, we had community support come out to support them going through with licensing, but at the same time, it was repeated over and over again where people were most interested in equity and looking to the city for guidance on that, equity and on taxes. I want to stress how important it is for the county to be able to be looking towards your leadership to ensure that we have proper tax rates and those tax rates stay in place and that they are in sync with what the county is doing. And when it comes to equity, that there's proper funding behind those programs to make sure that there is going to be positive impact into our neighborhoods. I look forward to your leadership on this issue, and if, however we can support in the county, we would be happy to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, I'm looking, I think now, Fanny, is there Fanny? Fanny G, please come forward. Yes, ma'am, identify yourself.
Good morning, Lynn Lyman, co-author and co-chair of Proposition 64. I come here today because I'm really disappointed in the City Council. You've done a lot of talk about equity, a lot of great talk that got a lot of us excited. Other than hiring Kat Packer, you haven't invested one penny in equity. So I don't actually believe that this Community Reinvestment Act that's going to put 0.125 of 1% into enforcement in equity is going to do anything. On top of that, by only reducing the regular taxes for 3 years, you're going to pit the industry against equity because nobody's going to accept a new 1% tax in exchange for a temporary reduction. So as the City of LA and as the center of cannabis, or formerly the center of cannabis in the world, you really need to put your money where your mouth is and invest in equity now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jackie Subak, cannabis advocate. I second what Lynn just said. I'm really disappointed in this as well. I think that combined with the war on drugs, which ripped families apart, and now what we're looking at today at our borders where families are being ripped apart, I think the city of Los Angeles finally has an opportunity to get on the right side of history and put money where it matters. We have a lot of families that have been torn to shreds over the war on drugs, and we need to put money into this social equity program. So I really, really want you to think about that. This is the opportunity for LA to do something right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a May Barrio? May Barrio, identify yourself. No, but you're next.
Good morning. My name is Fanny Guzman, and I'm here representing Latinos for Cannabis. I would like to echo a lot of things that have been said. Some key points are the illusion of inclusion in this Trojan horse that seems like the Trojan horse using social equity as a front to develop this multi-billion-dollar industry that seems to not find any money to fund what really drove this industry into a legitimate market. And I'd also like to support the funds going to DCR instead of City Council, as they will have more rapport with the companies and know exactly who is a social responsible brand and companies and not just the illusion of it. So I'd like to specifically request that the funds be given to DCR.
Okay, thank you. So if I could get Ms. May and Sergio Engstrom, Tyrone Freeman, you'll be the last speaker. Yes.
Hi, my name is May Burrell. I'm a resident of Los Angeles. I currently have a cannabis events license. I'm in the process of getting licensed in Los Angeles District 8 in your district, Mr. Dawson. I am a social equity applicant. And regarding the taxes, I would love for the taxes to actually go back to our community. In my community where my facility is, we truly need those tax dollars to go back to help support it, build it, use the tax dollars that we have to go towards the actual businesses that can help other people in the community. Thank you.
No, thank you. Mr. Freeman? And is there an Engstrom, Sergio?
Mr. Chairman, here today on behalf of CMA, you have myself, Tyrone Freeman, and my son, Exodus Freeman, sharing with you all against how good government works. So we wanted to stand in support of the tax initiative for two apparent reasons. One, that initiative will allow for voter engagement and seeing the progress the city has made on incorporating the community for objectives that serve the cannabis community to help better those, not only for beautification, but for education, and also seeing the tax dollars at work. And we think allowing that discussion during this initiative process will not only foster the industry, but help build a relationship that could be binding. So we support the initiative on the ballot, Mr. Chairman. We also believe that those revenues are important because they're allocated towards the objectives of which Proposition M was supported, and we stand fast with that, and we'll do the hard work that it takes to make sure it's successful. Thank you.
Thank you. How's your boy?
He's 9. It's Exodus Freeman, so he's 9, and I had a chance to come down and see a little bit about how government works in the summer. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, so no Sergio. So Sergio, come on. I'll pass. Sergio passes. Okay, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Clerk, closing public comment at this time. So why don't we move and vote on the items that are on the consent calendar? So I'll just try to run through this, Mr. Clerk, and stop me if I confuse you, which I do from time to time. But on item 5, we will adopt the city attorney's report, resolutions, and draft ordinances. 6, we'll adopt the city attorney's report and draft ordinance. 7, we will adopt the Ethics Commission's report. Item 8 through 14, we will adopt the CLA reports and resolutions. Item 15, we will adopt the city clerk report as amended and instruct the city clerk to report back after the end of the year with an evaluation of the implementation. So without objection.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
We
President,
also,
I have a recommended change to the clerk's recommendation on number 15.
You want to insert that? What is that?
Yeah, so it's item 15, Council File 18-01105, and I recommend that we strike recommendation 6 on the clerk's June 19, 2018 report and replace it with the following. Request the city attorney to report on the efficacy of transferring public hearings for nuisance abatement and code enforcement activities by the Department of Building and Safety to the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners relative to the efficacy of maintaining the hearings at council or at a council committee.
Okay, then that I could live with. Mr. Clerk, you wanted to say something?
no, I just wanted to indicate that the city attorney had a amendment to that.
Okay, so then without objection, these items will be deemed approved. Why don't we deal with the commissioner, the ethics commissioner? Would you have come forward for a moment? If you would introduce yourself and give us a little history and why you're looking forward to taking on this job. Welcome.
Wesson, council members Harrison, Dawson, and Weezar. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and your consideration of my appointment to the City Ethics Commission. My name is Shedrick Davis. I am a resident of the City of Los Angeles, and I'm currently the Western Regional Director for Lambda Legal Defense and Education Fund, Inc. Lambda Legal was founded in 1973. Our reason for being is to advance and protect the rights of LGBT people and those with HIV through litigation, education, and policy work. We're proud of our work in that field. My exposure in working for Lambda Legal for the last 6 years has really shown me the importance of government functioning at its highest and its best. I am honored that Controller Galperin has selected me as his appointment to the commission for the reason that I believe that the population of the city should continue to have full faith and confidence in its elected officials and appointed officials, that their business is being done really above board and with transparency. I appreciate the honor of being asked to serve in this position, and I open myself up to any other questions.
Well, let me just say this and share with my colleagues here that I think it was last week or maybe a little bit before that I was at an event with the controller, Mr. Galperin, and he just drove me crazy that whole night talking about you. So I really feel as though that I know you. I know that you're a good man. I know that you are a skilled man. And in order to keep him from driving me crazy the entire night, I told him that I would be leaning towards supporting your confirmation. So you make sure you share that with him. And if the members of this committee have no questions, I would, without objection, suggest that we approve the recommendation from the controller to appoint Mr. Davis to the Ethics Commission, which we will officially do a little later today. But if there are some questions, please, members, jump in and don't hesitate to ask them. The commissioner, first of all, let me say this to you. The staff at the commission, I have the highest respect for Tristan, Heather, that are here. They're very creative, very common sense, and they do the best they can to get things done. The other commissioners, if approved, that you'll have the opportunity to serve with are the best of the best. and I think you would be a welcome addition to that group. So unless there are any questions, so let it be written, so let it be done. All right? Okay. So we'll be recommending you to the full council in about an hour and some change. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, Mr. Clerk, you want to go to, we want to do maybe items 2, 3, and 4, or what would you recommend?
I would recommend to go ahead and go in order, and we'll go on to item number 2.
Okay. Should we, is Ms. Packard around? You want to come on up? In fact, what I'm going to have her come up, and let's just, you know, we're going to do 2, 3, and 4 together, so why don't you guys just be prepared to do that. So Harit, find a seat. Find a seat, share a mic. All right? So why don't we start off with Ms. Packard, and then the rest of you guys can chime in, and then the committee, let the committee do its work. So Ms. Packard, always a pleasure to see you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here in front of the Rules Committee this morning, a pleasure to address you, Mr. Council President. There are a lot of items which we have the opportunity to discuss today, but what I will prioritize and then hand off to my colleagues to describe is what the Department of Cannabis Regulation has been doing thus far in the processing of applications for licensure in the city. I want to note an article that I read of yours the other day where you described that we're getting it right by taking our time and trying to make sure that we're making intentional and thoughtful decisions. I've been in this position for the last 10 months, and I've had an opportunity to connect with many different stakeholders, community members and leaders, community-based organizations, industry operators, other regulators. Just this past weekend, I was in Mendocino County with folks from Sacramento, San Francisco, and Oakland, and there's a lot of pride and intention behind this social equity program. And so I first want to thank you for your leadership on this issue, this social equity program, because there are many jurisdictions who have skipped this conversation. There are 4 jurisdictions in the state of California that have social equity programs. Folks are live in the process of implementing both their regulatory programs and their social equity programs. But one thing is for certain, if we've learned that there are costs associated with not regulating cannabis, there are costs associated with regulating cannabis as well. I think that that's part of what the department has experienced over the course of the last several months, or we're realizing over time all of the responsibilities that we have taken on in this new role leading the implementation of our local regulatory program. There are amendments today that would essentially effectuate the department's ability to begin our phase 2 of licensing, and we've heard from stakeholders over and over again that folks are ready, particularly for phase 2, reminding folks that phase 2 is for those non-retailers who had prior relationships to our existing medical marijuana dispensaries. Phase 2 has a social equity component. All of the phase 2 applicants coming in have to qualify under the social equity program. Phase 3 is heavily tied into our social equity program in our licensing scheme. And so part of what we'll have an opportunity to discuss today specifically in this Cannabis Reinvestment Act is an opportunity to fund social equity. And I appreciate that there's an intention being put forward to allow us to dedicate funding to the social equity program. But what I will share is that I don't think that it makes sense for us to put all of our eggs in the Cannabis Reinvestment Act basket to fund the social equity program. I do think that there need to be general fund dollars spent and appropriated and allocated to the department for us to move forward. We will have many challenges, and we've had many challenges with the implementation of our local program. But one of the things that we need immediately is funding for the social equity program. I've described to many of the committee members to date that there are a number of steps that the department needs to take in order to implement that program. In the absence of funding currently, we've had a number of operators in the room offer to volunteer services and volunteer their time. And so I just want to make sure that we are working intentionally with this committee, with the council, to make sure that we are implementing this policy. Part of what you said in the article is that we have a lot of eyes on us, and that is absolutely true. And what a wonderful opportunity to have folks from around the state of California, around the United States, focus on our program, because we intend to do it right. But in order to make sure that we do it right, we need to dedicate funding immediately. Yesterday, the county heard and considered 3 options to legalize and regulate both medical and adult use. The first option was to legalize and regulate everything, the second to regulate certain activity, and the third to keep their ban. The County of Los Angeles doesn't have a social equity program, but I know that they're watching to see what the City of Los Angeles does. I've been in communication with folks in New York and New Jersey. And so, again, I appreciate the intention to move this conversation forward. There are many other issues that we will need to move forward as well. We will have our first commission meeting. I want to share with this body that the Department of Cannabis Regulation will host the first Cannabis Regulation Commission meeting on the 2nd of July in these council chambers at 2 p.m. And that will begin to facilitate even more much-needed public dialogue about how we move this conversation forward. But I appreciate the opportunity to address this body, and will pass it over to my colleagues if there's an intention to share specifics about the amendments today.
Okay, well, let me quickly respond to you. First of all, the city is, we all know we're fortunate to have you and the team that you are assembling to help us move forward as we go into this brave new territory for us, uncharted territory. It has never been the intention of this committee or myself or the members to just set aside money figuring that that would be it. We know that we're going to have to invest in the social equity program. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't have fought so tenaciously to make sure that the City of Los Angeles takes the lead in establishing a social equity program, which so many other cities and so many other states just avoided, because it is a very complicated, very sticky, very difficult issue. We chose that. We figured the only way to get through this was just to deal with it and to go through it. So we understand there are going to be days when we make people happy. There are going to be days when people aren't so happy, but we're going to continue to move forward. So I just want to assure you of that. We thank you for working with us. I want to thank all of the people that are here to testify. Based on the relationship that this committee has with the public, a lot of the recommendations, a lot of the suggestions that we've put in place have come directly from the individuals that come here and give public comment. And I would hope that the majority of people that are here recognize that their voices have been heard and they have helped influence this committee in what I believe to be a very positive way. So with that said, I guess you're at the plate now.
Jason Klein, Department of City Planning. Just wanted to let the committee know that we currently have 153 premises that have been authorized to engage in commercial cannabis activity. Across the 153 locations, they're engaged in about 938 different activities, 469 of which are adult use and 469 are medical. We anticipate that an additional 17 to 37 locations will probably get local authorization before we close phase 2, or excuse me, before we start phase 2, and that would close the books on phase 1. We still have somewhere between 20 and 40 locations where we need the applicants to either submit full documentation to the department to make the eligibility determination, or ownership over the business and BTRC number are still in dispute, and applicants are continuing to resolve those issues. And as they resolve them, the department, with the assistance of the Office of Finance and the City Attorney's Office, are moving forward those applications. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good morning, Alex Friedman, Deputy City Attorney. Just briefly on item number 2, the ordinance is before you. contain about a dozen plus amendments to the municipal code that will allow DCR to implement more efficient and stronger application procedures, including to the social equity program, and to promulgate rules and regulations that will allow DCR to respond to the ongoing and sudden developments in the industry. I'm happy to answer any other questions about item number 2, or I'll pass it along to my colleague to talk about the ballot measure.
Yeah, Harit, what you got?
Good morning, council members. Pursuant to the council's direction of June 5th, we prepared the documents necessary to place a ballot measure on the November ballot that would impose various special taxes on various types of cannabis activity pursuant to council's instructions. A 2/3 voter approval requirement is required for these taxes to be enacted, and these would be in addition to Proposition M's taxes, general taxes that were adopted last year. I can go over the taxes, but as you had included in your recommendations, they include a 1% gross receipts tax on all commercial cannabis activity, a 1% gross receipts tax on cannabis event organizers and management companies, and $5 surcharges on tests of cannabis products and on tickets sold to cannabis events. Item number 4 is a companion ordinance that would reduce the Prop M general gross receipts taxes on a temporary basis for over the course of 4 or 5 years, depending on the specific tax, to provide some relief to the tax basis on medical and non-medical marijuana activities.
Thank you. Members, questions? Okay. Well, why don't we do this, Mr. Clerk? On item 2, let's adopt the city attorney's report and draft ordinance. 3, adopt the recommendations of the chair. 4, adopt the recommendations of the chair. And if there are no, go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, pardon me. On item number 2, I understand that the city attorney is recommending an urgency clause on these amendments. And does the committee find that these amendments are necessary for the immediate preservation of the public welfare, and they should be passed with an urgency clause?
Okay, well, then we'll incorporate that.
Thank
you. So again, 4, recommendations of the chair, adopt 3, adopt the recommendations of the chair. 2, city attorney's report and draft ordinances, will adopt them. All right, so with no questions from the members, so without objection, so ordered on those items. Mr. Clerk, is there any additional business before this committee?
No, sir, that clears
Then
the
this
desk.
committee's adjourned. I want to thank everybody for coming.